At the palace banquet, the crown prince announced that whoever could complete the verse would become the future crown princess. In my previous life, I was the first to recite the matching verse, leading the crown prince to believe that I was the one who shared a connection with him in the plum garden. On our wedding night, my maid revealed that she was the one who had exchanged verses with the crown prince in the plum garden, and then she immediately took poison and died. After the crown prince ascended the throne as emperor, his first act was to posthumously honor the maid as the empress. The second was to grant me a cup of poisoned wine, causing my intestines to rot and leading to my death. If you hadn't impersonated Qinghe, the position of crown princess should have been hers. This is what you owe Qinghe. But originally, those poems were written by me. After I died, he threw my entire clan into the mass grave for wild dogs to fight over. When I opened my eyes again, I pushed the maid out myself. Isn't the crown prince eager to marry her as his consort? I'll let them have their way. 1. If the contrary wind understands my heart, whoever can recite the next line shall become my crown princess. As soon as the words were spoken, the noble ladies at the banquet vied to answer. Too pure to know the cold, lonely standard, hard to describe. Crown Prince Xiaozong shook his head. This palace banquet was arranged by the empress to select a consort for Xiaozong. Originally, it was intended for noble ladies to showcase their talents, but Xiaozong changed the rules at the last moment. None of the noble ladies from over a dozen prominent families managed to satisfy him, and all eyes turned to me, waiting for me to take the crown in one fell swoop. Even the empress looks at me with hope in her eyes. After all, my father is the head of the Hanlin Academy, and my mother is the legitimate daughter of the Imperial College. From the moment I was born, I was destined to become a consort or concubine. But in this lifetime, I no longer wished to enter the palace. I stood up, curtsied to Xiaozong, and hoarsely suggested, "Crown Prince, the one who truly understands your heart may not necessarily be a noble lady. Perhaps it is a daughter from a common family, or even a maidservant. Could you expand the list of candidates?" Xiaozong beamed with joy and declared boldly, "Whoever it may be, as long as they can complete the second half of the verse, they shall become my crown princess." I smiled faintly. That was exactly what I wanted to hear. I pushed the eager maidservant Qinghe forward. Qinghe stood in the center of the hall, clutching the corner of her clothes in a fluster. It seems the Chen family's young lady doesn't know the second line. Could it be that her literary talent is fake? If her maid can come up with the second line, would the crown prince really marry a maid as his crown princess? Amid the discussions, Xiaozong approached Qinghe, his eyes full of tenderness as he comforted her. "Don't be afraid, if it was truly you last night, I will surely give you an explanation." Tears welled up in Qinghe's eyes as she trembled and blurted out the next line. "If the contrary wind understands my heart, let it not easily destroy." Xiaozong's pupils dilated, and he immediately took Qinghe's hand, leading her before the empress with a joyful expression. "Mother Empress, she is your son's crown princess." The air in the room seemed to freeze. After a long silence, the empress, her face ashen with anger, slammed her hand on the table. "Nonsense! How can a mere maid become the crown princess?" Then, the empress turned her gaze toward me. "If the crown prince must marry, he should marry a daughter of the Chen family as his consort. As for this maid, at most she can be a chambermaid." I stepped forward, facing Xiaozong's malicious gaze, and knelt down to bow. "The crown prince and Qinghe are deeply in love with each other. I do not wish to take what another desires, so I beg the empress to revoke the decree. In my previous life, I wholeheartedly believed that Xiaozong was fond of me. It wasn't until I accidentally saw the letters he wrote to the maid that I realized the two had long been secretly involved. I resolutely sent Qinghe away from the Eastern Palace, but unable to bear the humiliation, she actually took poison and ended her life, ultimately resulting in 2 deaths, mother and child. On the eve of his ascension to the throne, Xiaozong presented me with a cup of poisoned wine. Only before my death did I realize that he had never forgotten Qinghe. 2. In this lifetime, even though I knew it was Qinghe who secretly copied the poem I wrote while drunk, I never exposed her. I let them have their way. Upon hearing my words, Xiaozong was stunned for a moment, then suddenly sneered with a cold expression. Mother, Chen Huaisu can't even come up with such a simple line of poetry. How can she be fit to be the crown princess? I'm afraid all her previous poems were actually written by Qinghe for her. The queen was momentarily speechless, her gaze sorrowful as she looked at me. Young lady of the Chen family, why can't you come up with the second half of the line? Both your parents are esteemed scholars of our time. At the mention of my parents, my eyes instantly reddened. In my previous life, if it weren't for seeking justice on my behalf, they would not have been stripped of their tendons and bones by Xiao Tsong, then thrown into a mass grave for wild dogs to fight over. Having been reborn, I would never again put my family in danger for the sake of a single line of poetry. I kowtowed and pleaded, I am not a suitable match for the crown prince. And our hearts do not connect. I beg your majesty to bestow the marriage upon the crown prince and Qinghe. Xiao Tsong held Qinghe's hand and knelt before the empress as well. Qinghe mustered her courage and said, Your Majesty, the crown prince is an outstanding figure among men. If in the future he wishes to take concubines or consorts, I will surely be tolerant and magnanimous. Xiao Tsong grew angry, interrupting Qinghe as she was swearing to the Empress Dowager, Mother, I will spend my entire life with her and only her, and I will never take a concubine. The Empress snorted coldly, stood up, and stared at the two of them with disdain. I will arrange your marriage, you'd better take care of yourselves. After the banquet ended, I left the palace gate. Before I could board the carriage, I heard Qinghe calling me from behind. Miss, she did not bow to me. You won't blame Qinghe for stealing your poem, will you? I smiled and said. That was written when I was drunk, even I can't remember it clearly, so how could it be considered stealing? I hadn't finished speaking when she suddenly grabbed my hand and swung it toward her face, then staggered and fell into Xiao Tsong's arms as he just walked over. Miss, I didn't mean to steal your spotlight. But I truly like the crown prince. If you must blame someone, blame me, not his highness. Xiao Tsong immediately shielded Qinghe behind him, his voice as cold as ice as he warned me, Chen Huaisu, from today on, Qinghe is no longer your maid. How dare you strike the future crown princess? Before I could explain, Qinghe's eyes instantly reddened. Your highness, after all, we are not yet married. If the young lady wishes to strike or scold, Qinghe is willing to accept the punishment. As soon as she finished speaking, she made as if to kneel. But Xiao Tsong swept her up into his arms. Xiao Tsong looked at me with a face full of disgust. Chen Huaisu, I never imagined you were like this in your daily life. No wonder Qinghe's poems, both in and out of context, are filled with grievances. Qinghe collapsed into Xiao Tsong's arms, crying, Your Highness, the young lady is not what you think, it's all my fault. 3. Xiao Tsong interrupted Qinghe and snorted coldly, If it's not like this, then what is it? Isn't it just because Chen Huaisu has read a few more years of books that she dares to be so aloof and pretentious, looking down on everyone else? But I simply detest noble ladies from prestigious families like her. On the surface, they appear flawless, like a warm jade in water, but once you peel it open, it's all rotten cotton inside. Qinghe, I will invite a great contemporary scholar to personally teach you music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. I refuse to believe you can't surpass that Chen Huaisu. Qinghe frowned slightly. Thank you, Your Highness. Qinghe will study hard. I rolled my eyes and took a step back. In that case, I thank Your Highness for teaching the maids in my household. However, Qinghe does not yet know how to write. So I'm afraid Your Highness will need to invest more effort. After saying this, I boarded the carriage, leaving the two of them behind. Qinghe, with her striking appearance, was always eager to climb the social ladder. At every banquet, she would seize the opportunity to slip away and flirt with the sons of noble families. A few days ago, a young nobleman even came to propose marriage for her, but she actually refused. It turned out she had set her sights on the crown prince. 3 days later, the Empress Dowager is hosting a painting exhibition, where noble young ladies are to compose poems for the scholars of the Imperial Academy, as the future crown princess. Qinghe naturally intended to make a grand impression. At the art exhibition, she wore a gold-embroidered robe that fit snugly, accentuating her alluring figure and captivating the students' gazes. The noble ladies whispered and snickered among themselves. Her dress is so tight, will she accidentally expose herself when she raises her brush to compose a poem? Qinghe's expression darkened, and she swayed her hips as she approached me. Miss Chen, last time I stole your spotlight, today. As we compose poetry, I'll give you the chance to shine. She never had much genuine talent to begin with. Couldn't even write properly. She only caught Xiao Tsung's attention by reciting a few lines of my poetry from memory. Now she's afraid of being exposed, so she's using retreat as a form of advance. That's right, Chen Huaisu, aren't you the #1 talented lady in the capital? Today's opportunity to shine is all yours. Xiao Tsung strode over to Qing He, gently placing his hand on her waist, his eyes filled with an unyielding tenderness. The noble ladies were indignant on my behalf, although it was clear that Qing He was deliberately making things difficult for me. No one dared to speak up for me. As Xiao Tsung was the crown prince, I glanced at Xiao Tsung, then turned and walked up to the painting. It's not that I can't inscribe a poem, but I have one condition. Xiao Tsung sneered. Noble ladies are always so pretentious. Fine. What is your condition? I smiled faintly and looked at the Empress Dowager. If my proposal is well received, I beg your majesty to grant me a marriage with the painter. 4. The Empress Dowager opened her eyes, scanned the scholars of the Imperial Academy, and said, granted, as soon as the words fell. Xiao Tsung staggered. A marriage grant? You are the daughter of the Academy head, how could you stoop to marry a mere scholar? If you must marry, it should be to a noble prince or aristocrat. Besides, Qinghe doesn't mind if I take a consort. If you're willing, I'll allow you to enter the Eastern Palace on the same day as Qinghe. Qinghe's face turned ashen, her hands clenched into fists inside her sleeves. It seemed she hadn't expected Xiao Tsung to act this way either. I looked at Xiao Tsung and said, didn't your highness say you detest noble ladies like me the most? Why would you want to marry me into your household? Moreover, you know I am the daughter of the Academy head, there's no way I would ever become someone's concubine. Xiao Tsung paused. Qinghe is not like you. If she were made a consort, she would be bullied. Chen Huaisu, how could you bear to see someone from your household become a laughingstock? I almost laughed out loud. Your highness, if you're worried about Qinghe being ridiculed, you don't have to marry me. Why force yourself? Besides, I haven't agreed to enter the Eastern Palace either. After saying this, I turned without hesitation to search for the painting. Students of the Grand Academy eagerly pointed to their own paintings, hoping to catch my favor and thus climb to greater heights. Only one painting, titled Solitary Angler Amidst 1,000 Mountains and Flying Birds, remained unclaimed. The brushwork in this painting is powerful and the style is sophisticated. Aside from the current Grand Tutor, Fu Yunmiao, no one else could possibly possess such skill. I picked up a brush and swept it across the painting. Over mountains no bird in flight, on pathways none in sight, a lonely fisherman afloat, is fishing snow in lonely boat. As the brush was set down, a chorus of admiration and praise arose throughout the hall. What a fine poem, what a fine poem. I, Fu Yunmiao, am truly fortunate to have the honor of marrying Miss Chen. I turned around and saw Fu Yunmiao in the crowd, dressed in a plain moon-white robe, walking toward me with a faint, enigmatic smile. Rumors say the Grand Tutor of the Grand Academy is aloof and ethereal, with an exceptionally handsome appearance. Seeing him today immediately made Xiao Tsung pale in comparison. Xiao Tsung stared intently at Fu Yunmiao. Grand Tutor, this event is for students to display their paintings. Why is your work also hung up there? Fu Yunmiao smiled faintly. This matter is not difficult to understand. As the Grand Tutor, if I cannot lead by example, how can I earn the respect and admiration of the students in the Grand Academy? He turned to look at me. Miss Chen is the most talented woman in the capital. It is Yun Miao's honor to have her compose a poem. If I could receive the Empress Dowager's personal blessing for marriage, Yun Miao would devote his life to Miss Chen alone. I heard that the Fu family's ancestral rule is to neither take in concubines nor keep mistresses. Today, it seems this is not false. Suddenly, he smiled and asked me, Miss Chen, would you be willing? I shook my head. Of course I am willing. He smiled and said, then please, Miss Chen, come with me to ask my aunt, the Empress Dowager, to grant us the marriage. I nodded and was about to leave when Xiao Tsung caught up with me, tugging at my sleeve. Chen Huaisu, I regret it. I will let Qing He give up the position of crown princess to you. How about that? I tugged hard on my sleeve, causing Xiao Tsung to lose his balance and fall to the ground. I turned and walked side by side with Fu Yunmiao toward the Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager narrowed her eyes, looked me up and down, and said with a smile, "My nephew here is 23 and still unmarried. Today, he has finally decided to marry, so I will immediately bestow this marriage upon you." Xiao Tsung's face instantly turned deathly pale. The wedding date was set for 10 days later, coinciding with the very day Xiao Tsung was to marry Qinghe. The wedding procession unexpectedly encountered Xiao Tsung, who dismounted from his horse and lifted my bridal curtain, with reddened eyes and a choked voice. He asked me, "Huaisu, don't marry him, marry me instead, will you?" Chapter 2, 5. I looked up. No, his breathing immediately quickened. "Huaisu, I won't marry Qinghe anymore. My wedding sedan is empty for you, won't you forgive me?" He made a move to grab me, and I blocked him with my foot. "Your Highness, whom you marry is your own affair and has nothing to do with me. I must ask you to conduct yourself with dignity." His eyelids drooped as he abruptly grabbed my ankle, only to be shoved away the next moment by Fu Yunmiao's palm. "Your Highness the Crown Prince, this is my wife. I must ask you to conduct yourself with dignity." Xiao Tsung staggered back a few steps, steadied himself, and then threw a punch, intercepted mid-air by Fu Yunmiao. Xiao Tsung struggled to break free, gritting his teeth. "Lord Fu, Chen Huaisu was supposed to be my wife. Does Lord Fu have a preference for picking up what others have discarded?" Fu Yuanmiao's dark eyes flickered with faint anger. His fists clenched tightly in his sleeves. I tugged at the hem of his robe. He gave me a gentle glance, then turned to confront Xiao Tsung head-on. "Your Highness the Crown Prince, it was you who insisted on marrying the maid Huaisu at the palace banquet that day. To refuse to marry her now would be an act of unkindness. As the heir to the throne, seizing a minister's wife on the street is an act of injustice. Your Highness is destined to inherit the empire. Must you really commit such unkind and unjust deeds? Moreover, the marriage between your servant and Huaisu was personally bestowed by the Empress Dowager. How could there be any talk of your Highness not wanting it?" As soon as the words were spoken, Xiao Tsung's face turned ashen, his lips trembling, yet he had nothing to say. Fu Yunmiao pushed Xiao Tsung aside and ordered the sedan chair to be lifted. Before the bearers could hoist it, Qinghe rushed out from the crowd. She knelt on both knees, crawling on her knees to me, tears falling like pear blossoms. "Miss, Qinghe was wrong. I beg you to give Qinghe a way out." Today was supposed to be her wedding day, yet she only wore a thin maid's outfit, looking completely different from how she appeared at the art exhibition. Seeing that I remained silent, she repeatedly confessed her wrongdoings before me. "Miss, I shouldn't have seduced the Crown Prince, nor should I have dared to aspire to the position of Crown Princess. But the Crown Prince is not a man of his word. He took my body but did not give Qinghe a proper status." As soon as Qinghe finished speaking, whispers arose among the onlookers. How could the Crown Prince of a nation do such a shameless thing? He is the Crown Prince. It is not uncommon for him to favor a palace maid. How can it be called shameless? But your Majesty governs the world with benevolence and virtue. If the Crown Prince goes back on his word, how will he govern the country in the future? Some said he deserved it, while others cursed him for his moral corruption. Qinghe knelt helplessly on the ground. She had thought someone would speak up for her, but no one cared about the reputation of a mere maid. This is how the world has always been. Xiao Tsung went from drenched in cold sweat to fearless in less than a moment. He cast a sidelong glance at Qinghe, his tone devoid of the tenderness and affection from just a few days ago. "You're nothing but a maid from the Prime Minister's residence. You've merely stolen a few lines of poetry from your young lady and dared to impersonate her in the plum garden. I was deceived by you before, but now that I've uncovered the truth, I will send you to the authorities immediately." Qinghe grabbed my ankle, weeping bitterly. "Miss, please save Qinghe. Qinghe's life is so miserable." I frowned as Xiao Tsung ordered someone to drag Qinghe away. With no other options left, she suddenly lunged at Xiao Tsung, grabbing his hair and clawing at his face. Shouting, I'll fight you to the death." For a young woman, it was unclear where she found such strength. Two people were wrestling together, and even with 3 or 4 others stepping in, they couldn't be pulled apart. For a moment, cries and shouts filled the air, and wails could be heard everywhere. "Guards, quick, someone. Get this wretched maid away from me." 6. Qinghe seemed to be making a final desperate struggle. She bit Xiao Tsung's ear fiercely, tearing off half of it and leaving his earlobe completely gone. A bloody mess. Xiao Tsung, with his crimson eyes and brows, clutching half an ear, screamed hysterically, "Beat her to death with a staff. Beat this wretch to death with a staff for me. Today is my joyous day, it is not suitable to see bloodshed." I lifted my gaze and looked at Fu Yunmiao. In the end, several strong guards from the Grand Tutor's residence forcibly pulled the two of them apart. However, the disheveled Qinghe was unwilling to stay calm. She was held up by the guards, continuously kicking towards Xiao Tsung while crying and begging for mercy from me. Fu Yunmiao ordered someone to send Qinghe away, gently helped me into the bridal sedan, and I glanced at him uneasily. He cast a gentle gaze at me. "Don't worry, leave it to me." After entering the bridal sedan, I lifted the curtain and saw him summon the medical officer to carry the crown prince away. He then dispersed the crowd. When the bridal sedan chair entered the Grand Tutor's residence, the auspicious hour had already passed. On the wedding night, I was somewhat annoyed. He brought over the Unity wine and gently tapped my nose. "My lady, what troubles you?" I looked up at him, broad shoulders, a slender waist, dashing eyebrows, and starry eyes. For a moment, I was stunned, and the words of blame on the tip of my tongue were left unspoken. Perhaps sensing my distress, he gently drew me into his embrace. "Whenever I am united in marriage with you, my lady, it is always an auspicious time." He gently lifted my chin. "The spring breeze blows all night. A beautiful scene in this fine time." 7. Waking up in the morning, I found the pillow beside me empty. I rubbed my sore waist and called for Hong Yao to ask her some questions. "Where is the Grand Tutor?" While helping me with my makeup, Hong Yao chattered away incessantly. "I heard that Madam enjoys the jujube paste cakes from the East Street, so the Grand Tutor woke up early and personally rode out to buy them." I subtly curved the corner of my lips, searching my mind for any trace of connection with him. After thinking carefully for a long time, I still couldn't find any intersection between him and me. Not long after, Fu Yunmiao hurried in with a flustered expression, fine beads of sweat on his forehead, pushing the door open. At that moment, I was in his study flipping through storybooks when I came across a small pink booklet with a flashy cover. I thought it must be a tale of talented scholars and beautiful ladies, the kind I love to read. Just as I was about to open it, he suddenly strode over to my side and slapped his hand over the booklet. I turned my head, puzzled, and glanced at him. The usually aloof and jade-like Grand Tutor suddenly blushed on one side of his face. My heart skipped a beat, and I lowered my gaze to glance at the pink booklet in my hand, my mind beginning to wander. Could this booklet be an erotic picture book? I thought back to how fierce he was last night, and it seemed almost certain. Pretending not to care, I clapped my hands, shifted my body away, and gave him a smile. "Did you buy this jujube paste cake for me?" He froze for a moment, then snapped back to reality. With one hand, he handed me the jujube paste cake, while the fingers of his other hand crept over the booklet, pulling it behind him bit by bit. I took a bite of the jujube paste cake. It was indeed fresher in the morning. Holding the jujube paste cake, I circled his study and was suddenly drawn to a painting of a court lady on the wall. The woman in the portrait, with eyes and brows quite similar to mine, is sitting by the stream enjoying the cool breeze. In the stream stands a young man dressed in white as pure as snow, wearing a bamboo hat. Catching fish, I remember now. One midsummer, my father took me back to the countryside in Qingju to escape the heat. I loved cooling off by the stream, and at that time, there was a young man who wore a bamboo hat and came to the stream every day to recite poetry and exchange verses with me. "Are you him?" I asked, my voice hoarse. He covered half his face with a booklet, revealing only a pair of clear, bright black eyes. "Don't I look like him?" "Yes, very much so." I chuckled, walked up to him, casually took the booklet away, and stared intently at him. "So it was you." Why were you wearing a veil back then? He smiled gently. I had a breakout of red pimples and had no choice but to cover up. I swayed the booklet in my hand thoughtfully, pursing my lips slightly. I see. His eyes widened, following the booklet in my hand as it moved up and down. Suddenly, I felt a mischievous urge to tease him. I set down the tray, turned my back, and abruptly opened the booklet, one after another. There were portraits of me, laughing, sleeping, riding horses, reciting poetry. All were laid bare without exception. After flipping through just a few pages, my face was already flushed beyond belief. Suddenly, a hand reached down from above and snatched the booklet away with a swift motion. I turned around and met his gaze. Both of us were flushed, our throats dry and tight. We spoke in unison. I was the first to feel shy and tried to walk away, lifting my skirt. When suddenly a pair of large hands wrapped around my waist from behind, and a scorching breath brushed against my ear. Don't go. I turned around, and a fierce kiss silenced the words I hadn't yet spoken. Fu Yunmiao, have you liked me for a long time? He nodded. Yes, for a long time. We spent 3 days and 3 nights together. And it wasn't until the traditional return to the bride's family that he finally carried me out of bed to get dressed. 8. After marriage. Fu Yunmiao was extremely considerate to me, and within less than a month, I was diagnosed with pregnancy. At the palace banquet, he sat beside me, forbidding me to drink and keeping a close watch on me. Since I couldn't fully enjoy myself either way, I simply went along with his arrangements. During the banquet, His Majesty invited him to discuss matters, and when he left his seat, I finally saw Xiao Tsong. It had only been a month since I last saw him, yet there were dark circles under his eyes. And his complexion looked much more haggard. What stood out the most was that a part of his ear was missing, making his entire appearance seem rather incongruous. I had heard many things about him, the most common being that his appearance was now marred, and His Majesty intended to establish the third prince as the crown prince. He is also aware of this matter, but his affairs have nothing to do with me anymore. I turned my head away, no longer looking at him, feeling a bit unwell in my stomach. I stood up to go to the imperial garden for some fresh air. Unexpectedly, I still ran into Xiao Tsong, under the hexagonal palace lantern. His gaze was heavy as he looked at me. Chen Huaisu, I regret it. If you are willing to divorce, I will marry you without holding any grudges. As for the Grand Tutor, after I ascend the throne, I will marry the princess to him as a form of compensation. Are you willing to return to my side? He walked towards me step by step, and I covered my lower abdomen. Retreating with each step, it seems he still doesn't realize his current situation. He is in grave danger. Your Highness, I am now the wife of the Grand Tutor, and I am already carrying his child. I implore you to seek another beauty. As soon as the words were spoken, he widened his eyes and stared at my stomach, his tone suddenly turning icy. You are carrying Fu Yunmiao's child. I nodded. He lunged forward in a swift stride, his eyes like a demon risen from hell, and grabbed my throat. Chen Huaisu, how dare you conceive his child without my permission? How many times have you two been together? How could you possibly get pregnant with his child so quickly? Struggling to breathe, I desperately slapped his hand and hoarsely yelled at him. Xiao Tsong, you're insane, let go of me. Xiao Tsong, in a frenzied state, forced me to the edge of the lake, his eyes bloodshot. I forbid you to carry another man's child. The lake water is icy cold, it will surely restore your purity. He gave a sinister smile and gradually loosened his grip on my neck, causing me to fall backward. In the depths of winter, if I were to truly fall into the water, not only would the child in my womb be lost, but my own life would likely be in jeopardy as well. A sudden idea struck me, and I grabbed his hands, begging for mercy. Xiao Tsong, I promise you, I will agree to the divorce. Please, spare my child. He let out a sinister laugh, summoning my courage. I pushed him forward and raised my voice. Fine, I won't keep it. Have someone bring me a bowl of abortion medicine now, and I'll drink it right in front of you. He nodded with satisfaction and ordered the palace attendant to immediately fetch the abortion medicine. 9. Not long after, a young palace maid approached with her head lowered, carrying a bowl of dark, murky medicine in quick, small steps. Xiao Tsong took the medicine bowl and brought it before me. his voice like a vengeful spirit demanding a life. "Drink it, I will watch you drink." I glanced around and noticed the shadows of the trees swaying. But there was not a single trace of any palace attendants in sight. It must be that Xiao Tsong had already dismissed the palace attendants before he arrived. I held the medicine bowl, frowning deeply. If I don't drink it, I'm afraid I won't live to see Fu Yunmiao again. I took a deep breath and was about to drink the medicine when a flash of blade light suddenly appeared in the bowl. Before I could even react, a gleaming dagger was plunged into Xiao Tsong's chest. Blood gushed out from his chest. The bowl in my hand slipped and shattered all over the floor. My eyes widened, and I covered my mouth and nose, feeling waves of nausea. Xiao Tsong looked down at his chest, then turned around as stiff as if petrified, a familiar face slowly emerging from behind him. It was Qinghe. You vile woman, how dare you kill me?" Qinghe's face was slashed and her hands were covered in festering sores. She let out a wild laugh and yanked the dagger from Xiao Tsong's body. "Your Highness, you sent someone to scar my face and had the eunuchs humiliate me night after night. You probably can't imagine how long I had to curry favor with that old eunuch before he agreed to bring me into the palace." Xiao Tsong's pupils constricted, his figure staggering as he moved to kill Qinghe. My legs went weak, and just as I nearly collapsed, Fu Yunmiao rushed over in great strides, kicking Xiao Tsong to the ground. "Huaisu, are you all right?" I shook my head, still trembling from the shock. Fu Yunmiao held me in his arms, gently stroking my head, and I pointed towards Xiao Tsong. "He's dying, quickly call the imperial physician to save him." Fu Yunmiao glanced at the medicine on the ground, then at Qinghe, and said calmly, "Will you die with him, or will he live while you die?" Qinghe wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and smiled indifferently. "You want him to die?" Fu Yunmiao sneered coldly. "If you choose to die with him, your family will be taken care of." At the mention of the word family, Qinghe's eyes reddened. She wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes and, before the palace guards could arrive, jumped into the icy winter lake with Xiao Tsong in her arms. Xiao Tsong had no time to call for help before Qinghe pushed his head down, submerging him in the water. After a few struggles, he fell silent. By the time the emperor and empress arrived, I could hear Qinghe's desperate murmurs coming from the lake. "If the contrary wind understands my heart, let it not easily destroy." 10. I nestled in Fu Yunmiao's embrace, sighing with emotion, for Qinghe, and even more so for Xiao Tsong. Seeing the lake filled with blood, the empress staggered and cried out, "Save them." Xiao Tsong was eventually rescued, but when Qinghe was pulled from the water, her body had already turned pale from soaking. When the imperial physician examined the body, he reported to the empress that it was a case of one body carrying two lives. The empress covered her mouth and ordered someone to throw Qinghe into the mass burial ground. After returning to the residence, I was so frightened that I collapsed weakly. Fu Yunmiao stayed by my side the entire night, telling me stories of beautiful scenes and auspicious times from the storybooks, as well as the latest happenings in the capital. I lay in bed for 10 days, and he told stories for all 10 days. Once my body has fully recovered, I want to go out for a walk on the bustling street. A ferocious-looking beggar is being beaten by a crowd. You say you're the crown prince. Would the crown prince dress like this? Would the crown prince come to a beggar's den and fight with stray dogs for food? TSK, you shameless beggar. If you dare impersonate the crown prince again, we'll report you to the authorities. My body swayed, and I instinctively turned toward the voice, only to find that person looking right back at me. A chill ran down my spine. And if Hong Yaro hadn't steadied me, I might have collapsed to the ground right then. Wasn't that Xiao Tsong? How had he ended up in such a wretched state? It seems the rumors are true. After he was saved, not only was his face disfigured, but he also lost his reproductive function. Who would have thought that Qinghe, while holding him in the water, could still manage to cut off his manhood? Now, even if the imperial physicians saved him, he can no longer function as a man. Later, it was heard that he plotted a rebellion and fell out of the emperor's favor, depose him from his position as crown prince and reduce him to a beggar. "Chen Huaisu, you vile woman, it's you who brought me to this state." He pushed the beggar aside and came at me to strike. Suppressing my disgust, I called over a few beggars, threw them a pouch of money, and spoke coldly. "Take this money, see that beggar, I want him to fight with wild dogs for food every day." I will never forget the pain from my previous life, when he executed my clansman by 1,000 cuts and caused my entire family to be skinned and have their tendons pulled out. In this life, I will make him taste the same suffering. The beggars took the money, exchanged a knowing smile, and turned to reply, "Don't worry, noble one, we'll enjoy the finest food and drink, and we won't share a bite with him." I nodded with satisfaction. "Take him away, throw him as far as you can." Before Xiao Tsung could reach me, he was swept away by a swarm of beggars. He looked resentful, shouting loudly, "Chen Huaisu, I want you to die a miserable death. Having lived a second life, I will surely make your entire family accompany me in death." His voice grew fainter and fainter, until I could no longer hear it. Only then did I gather my emotions and slowly make my way, taking in the various scenes of everyday life along the streets. 3 years later, the third prince ascended the throne as emperor, and Fu Yunmiao was appointed as the prime minister. I became the prime minister's wife, envied by everyone. My family no longer suffered the tragic fate of being torn apart as in my previous life. My clan also began to live peaceful and prosperous lives. A few years later, Fu Yunmiao retired from his official post and returned to his hometown, taking me and our daughter to travel and enjoy the scenery. I asked him why he didn't continue to stay in the imperial court. He whispered in my ear, "I'm too tired. I want to have another child with you, but I just don't have the energy." My face flushed with embarrassment. I lowered my gaze and playfully hit him. He pretended to kiss me, but I gently pushed him away and looked down at the child in my arms. "Changle, let's talk about it tonight. The child is still here." He gave me a light kiss and whispered softly, "Do you want another daughter or a son?" I pushed him away with a punch, old and shameless. I lifted the carriage curtain to see lush green bamboo and a bright, peaceful spring day. I have finally started living a life different from my previous one. The end.